The stars are dying, not from age, but from a wound in the cosmos so vast it swallows all light. The entropy weaver, a void of pure nothingness, is here, and only two beings, a warrior god and a genius inventor, stand between everything and the final, crushing silence. The final battle had left them with nothing but the dust of a broken universe. Thor, his golden armor scarred with the marks of cosmic despair, leaned on a single, shattered rock, his hammer, Mjolnir, a cold, unyielding weight in his hand. His divine fire, once a roaring blaze, was now a flickering ember. The sky above them was a testament to failure, a canvas of dead stars and galaxies being slowly devoured by an invisible, insatiable maw. This was the null point, the final stand against the entropy weaver, a sentient void that unmade reality itself. Beside him, Tony Stark, encased in the last, desperate iteration of his Iron Man suit, was a silhouette against the cosmic decay. The suit, a fusion of Asgardian alloys and Stark tech, was barely holding together, its arc reactor sputtering like a dying heart. Tony wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting to build, to create, to find a logical solution to an illogical enemy. "We're out of options, point break," he said, his voice a strained whisper through the comms. "It's not just eating the universe, it's unmaking the concept of existence. My suit's getting a negative reading on causality itself." The entropy weaver wasn't a being you could punch or blast. It was a perfect, elegant absence, a dark spiral that moved with the terrifying grace of pure logic. It had no face, no form. It was a hole in the universe, and its existence was the end of all things. It advanced with a silent, consuming power, its very presence causing their memories to fray at the edges, their identities to feel thin and unreal. Thor gripped Mjolnir, his knuckles white. "Then we must change the game," he roared, his voice echoing in the dead silence. "If it is an absence, we must become a presence, a story that is too bright to be consumed." He was not a god of strength now. He was a god of conviction. He knew their only weapon was their narrative, their long, messy, flawed, and glorious history of fighting against impossible odds. Tony's mind was already a whirlwind of calculations, his cerebral cortex working at a speed no human should be able to handle. "A story? You mean a narrative? Something with a plot and characters?" His tone was a blend of disbelief and frantic genius. "It's a long shot, but if this thing is feeding on the lack of a universe, maybe a new one, a narrative-based one, is the only thing it can't eat. It's too messy for its perfect nothingness." They began to work. Tony, with his last ounce of power, began to project a vast, holographic network, a neural map of everything he was. Every memory, every equation, every line of code, every joke, and every moment of failure was laid bare. He was creating a new arc reactor, not from vibranium or arc energy, but from pure, raw storytelling. He was turning his life into a script. Thor, meanwhile, did not project. He reached deep within himself, not for the power of thunder, but for the fundamental truths of his being. He thought of his mother, Frigga's love. He thought of Loki's chaos. He thought of Odin's lessons. He began to weave a new tapestry, not of fate, but of faith in something better, something new. He was giving his life purpose, a beautiful, tragic, and heroic saga that would be too complex for the entropy weaver to unravel. As they worked, the cosmic void began to react. The entropy weaver, recognizing their act of defiance, focused its immense, silent power on them. It began to erase their memories, not by force, but by quiet suggestion. "Your father is a lie. Your love for Pepper is an illusion. Your people are all gone, and their suffering was all for nothing. Your sacrifice is meaningless." It was a psychological war, designed to make them doubt their own narrative. If their story broke, the power to create a new one would vanish. Thor fought back, not with a roar, but with a quiet, resolute sadness. "My pain is real. My memories are mine. They are the truth." He embraced the sorrow, the loss, and the love, turning them into solid foundations for the new reality they were trying to build. He wasn't trying to forget. He was trying to remember every single detail, no matter how painful, so it could be woven into the fabric of this new creation. Tony, too, faced his demons. He saw his failures as a father figure to Peter, his endless need for validation. He felt the phantom pain of the snap, the crushing weight of every failure. "This is not my end," he whispered, his voice steady. "This is my final project, the greatest one of all. To be something more than a hero, to be a beginning." Continue. Segment 2. Their combined narrative, Thor's epic saga of loss, love, and redemption, and Tony's complex tale of a man who built a world from scratch, began to coalesce. It was a torrent of light and color, a furious, creative explosion that hit the Entropy Weaver not with a bang, but with the quiet, overwhelming force of an intricate plot twist. The void couldn't consume it because it was a narrative, a story with so many layers it was impossible to unmake. Tony, his suit now a husk of its former self, stood with Thor, watching their lives become the foundation of a new universe. The light of their combined stories began to fill the void, not by pushing the darkness away, but by becoming a new form of existence that the void could not comprehend. It was an act of profound, cosmic defiance, born not from strength, but from the power of a good story. The torrent of their combined stories, a furious cyclone of light and memory, did not merely fill the void. It rewrote the fundamental principles of reality. The Entropy Weaver, a perfect predator of nothingness, was not being destroyed. It was being redefined. Its silent, consuming presence was now the canvas upon which Thor and Tony were painting a new universe. The act was agonizing, a cosmic-level surgery of the soul. Every moment they had lived, every failure they had endured, was being offered up as the raw material for creation. For Thor, this meant reliving every painful memory with a visceral clarity. He felt the cold shock of his mother, Frigga's, death. He saw the betrayal in Loki's eyes over and over, not as a memory, but as a living, breathing component of the new cosmic structure. His past was his present, and his pain was the fuel. He was not a god creating a world with a word. He was a mortal man building a home with his tears and his blood. His divine power, once a source of strength, was now a painful echo, a constant reminder of what he had to give up for this new reality to take shape. Tony's experience was different, but no less harrowing. He was a scientist, a man of logic and reason, but he was forced to abandon every rule he knew. His mind, once a fortress of equations and schematics, was now a river of raw emotion. He relived the fear of the wormhole at New York, the crushing weight of the Infinity Gauntlet, and the quiet despair of his final moments. He felt the immense power of his arc reactor, the very heart of his legacy, being siphoned away, not just for power, but for purpose. He was the architect, but he was also the building material, and the process of turning himself inside out was more terrifying than any battle. The universe began to take form around them. It wasn't a universe of galaxies and nebulae at first, but a landscape of ideas and concepts. The ground beneath their feet solidified into what felt like a perfect, unyielding memory of a battlefield, a testament to their warrior spirit. Trees sprouted, not from soil, but from the combined wisdom of Thor's lineage and Tony's scientific breakthroughs. They were a beautiful, chaotic mix of Asgardian runes and advanced circuit boards. The air itself tasted of hope and regret, a perfect, bittersweet mixture that was the essence of their story. The Entropy Weaver, in a final act of self-preservation, began to fight back. It was not a physical attack, it was a conceptual one. It began to send out narrative voids, miniature black holes of unstory that tried to erase the new universe from the inside out. These were moments of their past that were so painful, so illogical, or so deeply flawed that they threatened to unravel the entire new reality. They manifested as whispering specters, phantom memories that tried to convince them that their sacrifice was meaningless. A shadowy version of the Infinity War stood before Tony, its whispers telling him, "You were too late. You could have saved them all. Your hubris cost everything." It was the embodiment of his worst fears, a living manifestation of his guilt. For Thor, it was a silent, sorrowful vision of the destruction of Asgard, with every soul he failed to save standing in judgment. "You are not a king. You are a fool who let his home burn," the vision cried. But Tony and Thor had anticipated this. They had already sacrificed so much that there was nothing left for the voids to take. They had poured their pain and failure into the very foundation of this new universe, making the weaknesses the core of its strength. Tony's guilt, a constant companion throughout his life, was now a powerful, stabilizing force in the new reality. Thor's grief was the gravity that held this new world together. They stood together, two titans of two different worlds, facing the consequences of their creation. They were no longer fighting a war. They were simply existing, and their existence was the most powerful act of defiance the cosmos had ever seen. The narrative voids, having nothing left to consume, simply dissolved. Their purpose had been to attack a story, but they found a universe that was the story. Silence. Not the cold, crushing silence of the Entropy Weaver's void, but a vibrant, pregnant stillness. Thor and Tony stood on a ground that felt like solid thought. The air wasn't gas. It was pure, shimmering color. Above them, the sky was a rotating helix of emerald logic and crimson magic, a furious kaleidoscope of creation. This was the story universe, the reality born from the narrative they had poured into the void, a realm where their memories and flaws were the fundamental laws of physics. Tony collapsed, his metal shell an empty husk. He was alive, his own heart hammering in his chest, but the arc reactor was gone, ripped from his sternum and sacrificed to fuel the final narrative. He felt raw, exposed, and strangely lighter. He was once again just Tony Stark, a man with a genius brain and a human heart, standing in a universe where both seemed wildly inadequate. Thor stumbled, not from injury, but from profound loss. Stormbreaker was gone, assimilated into the foundation of this new reality. The glorious thunder of his lineage was silenced. He was no longer a god of thunder. He was merely Thor, son of Odin, stripped of all Mjolnir-forged power. He was physically strong, but the divine connection, the cosmic energy that defined him, had been given away. "The price of creation is high," he murmured, his voice sounding mortal, filled with an unfamiliar exhaustion. "We built this place with our fire, Stark. Now we must live in its embers." The universe they had created was beautiful, but unstable. It began to shake, not with the chaos of entropy, but with the specific, targeted violence of self-doubt. The new reality, born from their flawed, messy human/Asgardian story, contained every doubt they had ever held. And that doubt was coalescing. From the swirling helix sky, a shape descended, the echo of the void. It was a towering, spectral reflection of a broken Iron Man suit and a defeated Thor, a manifestation of every time they had failed, every choice they regretted. It moved with the devastating logic of their combined failures, its silent presence, threatening to unravel the narrative from the inside out. "You are frauds. The universe ended because of your failings. You built this on lies. Your sacrifice was meaningless." The Echo's thought voice was a perfect mimicry of their own deepest fears. Tony scrambled back, his mind racing. "It's not an enemy, it's a virus. A self-correction mechanism based on our core vulnerabilities. It's trying to unwrite the story by proving we aren't worthy of the victory." Thor charged, his warrior instinct overriding his lack of power. He threw a punch, a powerful, mortal blow. It passed through the Echo like smoke. "Then we must prove our worth without the power," he roared, drawing on the memory of his father's love, not his thunder. Tony was already working. He noticed the ground, solid thought. He saw the trees, crystalline logic woven with organic chaos. He realized that this universe responded to intent and ingenuity above all else. His mind, the genius that had always been his true power, was now his only weapon. He grabbed a crystalline shard of logic wood and a handful of flowing magic moss, its strands vibrating with raw, unrefined energy. He began to sculpt, to merge, to build without tools, using only the sheer force of his concentrated will. He was designing a narrative anchor, a device that would force the unstable reality to accept its own existence. "I need a conduit, Thor. Something with pure, unadulterated truth. No armor, no hammer, just the essence of who you are." Tony shouted, his fingers flying over the strange materials. Thor understood. He stood before the echo of the void, letting its psychological attacks wash over him. It showed him Frigga's death, Loki's fall, and the shame of his initial failures on Earth. Instead of fighting it, he embraced it. I am not worthy of the hammer. I am a fool. I let my arrogance destroy my home. That is my truth, he cried, not in defeat, but in acceptance. He channeled that raw, agonizing honesty, the humanizing pain of his mortality, into his hands. When Tony finished his device, a pulsating orb where crystalline logic flowed through threads of green magic, Thor slammed his hands onto it, not in a destructive blow, but in an act of profound, emotional transmission. He poured his accepted pain, his flawed but enduring love, his story of becoming a better man, into the orb. The narrative anchor flared with a brilliant, steady light. It didn't destroy the echo of the void. It simply legitimized it. The echo, the manifestation of their doubt, became a permanent, stable shadow on the horizon, a constant reminder of the price of creation and the need for vigilance. It proved that this new universe was real because it contained its own capacity for failure. The shaking stopped. The helix sky settled into a steady, glorious spin. Tony and Thor stood side by side, exhausted, changed, and strangely renewed. They were stranded, but they were also the parents of a new cosmos. Their old war was over. Their new mission, to guard the fragile, beautiful story they had created, had just begun. They were no longer avengers of a dying Earth. They were the keepers of the narrative. They were the keepers of the narrative. Not gods, not men, but living concepts in a universe born of their very souls. Thor and Tony felt an intimate, almost agonizing connection to the fabric of reality itself. Every thought they had, every emotion they felt, rippled through the cosmos they had created. The sky was their hope, the ground was their resilience, and the ever-present, shadowy echo of the void on the horizon was their constant reminder of the pain that had brought them here. For a time, there was peace, an exhausted, quiet peace born from the ultimate sacrifice. They spent days exploring, marveling at a world where rivers flowed with liquefied memory and mountains were shaped by unspoken regrets. But the silence was deceptive. The universe was young, and like any newborn, it was learning. It was searching for stability, for perfection, and it looked to its creators past for the blueprint. The first sign was subtle. A single, flawless Asgardian flower, a species long extinct, bloomed at Thor's feet. It was not a creation from the new universe. It was an exact, perfect copy from a time before his fall. Thor bent down to touch it, a wave of nostalgia washing over him. It was a memory, yes, but it felt clean, as if his grief had been washed away. "You see that, old friend?" Tony's voice was a low hum of caution. "That's a glitch. The universe is trying to correct its source code. It thinks our pain is a bug." The glitch escalated. A holographic projection of Tony's old Iron Man suits shimmered into existence. Not the battle-scarred Mark I or the final gauntlet armor, but a pristine, impossible-to-build prototype. It was the suit of a man who had never faced a demon, a man who had never been broken. A voice, the perfect copy of Jarvis, whispered from the suit speakers, "Sir, your past has been optimized. All mistakes have been deleted." This was the new enemy, the silent lie. It wasn't an attack, but a seductive temptation. It promised to unburden them, to remove the scars that made them who they were. The universe, in its quest for perfection, was trying to rewrite their story, to create a flawless foundation by erasing the very pain that had forged it. Thor felt a cosmic tug. The sky before him began to shimmer, revealing a golden vision of Asgard, whole and untouched. His mother and father stood on the rainbow bridge, smiling, their faces unmarred by loss. Heimdall watched from the observatory, his eyes gleaming with the lives he never had to sacrifice. The voice of the silent lie resonated in his heart. "This is your kingdom, worthy one. It can be real. All you have to do is forget the fire." Tony was met with a different vision. He was no longer a cosmic guardian, but a man in a quiet, sun-drenched workshop. Pepper was there, smiling, a life together that was never interrupted by alien invasions or impossible burdens. He saw himself, a younger, more carefree version, holding a tool, not a weapon. The silent lie whispered, "This is your future, Tony. All you have to do is let go of the pain." The temptation was more powerful than any weapon they had ever faced. It was the fulfillment of every wish, the granting of every unspoken prayer. Thor felt his hand reaching for the vision of Asgard, his heart yearning for the family he had lost. Tony's mind raced with 1,000 reasons why this simple, painless life was the logical conclusion to his existence. Their narrative was at a breaking point, but then a memory, sharp and unbidden, pierced through the illusion. For Tony, it was the raw, unpolished sound of his first arc reactor, the one built in a cave with scraps. The memory was not of glory, but of fear, of an impossible moment that defined him. He remembered the agony, the pain, the very thing the silent lie was trying to erase. He was a better man because of that cave. He had to be. For Thor, it was the image of Loki, broken and redeemed, a final brotherly hug before the end. It was the moment of acceptance, the grief that solidified his character. He would not be the king he was meant to be if he had not felt that profound loss. It was his truth, his story. This perfection is a prison, Thor roared, his voice echoing through the illusory Asgard. A life without pain is a life without purpose. The fire forged me into a better king, even if I have no kingdom to rule. Tony clenched his fist, and the perfect vision of his workshop shattered into a million fragments of light. I wouldn't be the man who saved the universe if I hadn't been the man who was broken by it, he cried. My story isn't one of perfection. It's one of redemption. Their combined rejection of the silent lie was the ultimate act of defiance. The cosmic energy of their shared truth slammed into the universe, not as a destructive force, but as a stabilizing one. The silent lie, a concept that could not exist in the face of raw, accepted honesty, simply unraveled. The flawless flowers wilted, the pristine suits dissolved, and the perfect visions vanished. The universe settled, its foundation now unshakable. The echo of the void still loomed, a constant reminder of their flaws, but it was no longer a threat. It was an immutable part of the landscape. Thor and Tony stood together, exhausted but triumphant. They had not defeated an enemy. They had saved their own story. The universe was theirs, and its future was safe, for it was built not on perfection, but on the enduring power of two broken men who refused to be anything but themselves. The universe was finally, utterly still. The vibrant, living reality, no longer racked by the cosmic tremors of its creator's self-doubt, settled into a glorious, humming peace. The shadowy echo of the void remained, a faint scar on the distant horizon, but it was no longer a threat. It was a monument, a testament to the fact that their story, with all its failures and pain, was real. And more importantly, it was theirs. Thor and Tony stood on a mountain peak forged from solidified defiance. The sky, a kaleidoscope of cosmic forces, now pulsed with a rhythmic, steady light. Their powers, their suits, their hammers, all were gone. But in their place was a profound, silent understanding. They had given up everything to create this reality, and it was perfect, not because it was flawless, but because it was true. A shimmering light appeared before them, a golden, liquid doorway in the air. It wasn't the echo, nor was it the silent lie. It was something different, something born from the deepest, most cherished memories they had poured into the universe's creation. The gateway shimmered and solidified, revealing a flawless vision of the past. For Tony, it showed him his workshop, sun-drenched and peaceful. A younger, happier Pepper stood there, smiling, holding a picture of a child. His father, Howard Stark, was sitting in a chair, a proud, soft look on his face. This was the life he had always longed for, a family, a legacy without the constant fear of cosmic threats, a perfect redemption. The air from the gateway smelled of motor oil and roses. It was an offer to go back, to a reality where he never had to shoulder the immense burden of saving the world, where he was simply Tony Stark, a husband, a father, a son. For Thor, the gate showed him the golden halls of Asgard, whole and untouched by the flames of Ragnarok. Heimdall, his eyes gleaming, stood at the Bifrost. His mother, Frigga, was by the throne, a loving smile on her face. And Loki, his brother, stood beside her, a mischievous but loyal glint in his eye. This was the home he had lost, the family he had mourned, the kingdom he had failed to protect. The air smelled of mead and ancient stone. It was an offer to step back into a life where he was a true prince, a son, a brother, before the ultimate price had to be paid. The visions were so real they ached. The ultimate test was not a physical one, but a spiritual one. The universe was offering them a choice: live in the perfect world they created, or return to the perfect past they had lost. Thor reached a hand toward his family, his fingers trembling with a grief so ancient it felt like a part of his very being. He could feel his mother's warmth, hear Loki's familiar sarcasm. He could be home. He could be whole. Tony took a step forward, his mind flashing through 1,000 futures he could have had. A life without the arc reactor in his chest, without the constant vigilance, without the inevitable, final snap of his fingers. He could hold his child, a life that would be pure, unburdened by his heroic debt. But then, Thor saw a flash of his past self in the reflection of the Golden Gate, the arrogant, entitled prince who had to lose everything to become worthy. He saw the fire that had consumed his home, and he knew that fire, that pain, was what had forged him into the man who stood here today. He looked to Tony, seeing the same raw, exposed human being who had sacrificed his power, his past, and his peace for the sake of something new. The lie of a perfect past is the greatest prison of all, Thor said, his voice quiet but firm. I am no longer the man who lived there. He is gone, and I would not be here now if he had not died. Tony's hand stopped. He looked at the face of his child, and then back at the scarred, resilient face of the man who had helped him create a new universe. He remembered the cold floor of the cave, the shattered glass of the arc reactor. The pain was real, but so was the strength it gave him. He was a better man for it. He slowly, deliberately, pulled his hand back. My story isn't in what I lost, he said, the words a gentle, steady force. It's in what I chose to build after it was gone. Together, they turned away from the gateway, the visions, unable to hold in the face of their profound, accepted truth, wavered and dissolved into the vibrant fabric of the new reality. They had finally defeated every last enemy, every last doubt, every last lie. They were no longer heroes bound to a specific universe. They were the keepers of the narrative, the silent guardians of a cosmos born of two broken men who found a new, greater purpose. They began to walk, not toward a destination, but into a future that was utterly and completely their own. The greatest battle was over. The greatest journey had just begun.